Hello, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm a practicing internist and have been involved in work related to promoting resilience and building a culture of well-being for a few years now, most recently in a leadership role. I have no financial disclosures and enjoy working on various committees with these national organizations. As we look at promoting connection and building a resilient organization, it's really important that every member in that organization feels like they are connected to their teams, they're connected to the overall organization, and that they matter. If you think about it, we spend a large portion of our waking time at work. We come to work wanting to do the right thing, wanting to make a difference. We want to feel like we belong to our team, where we have a voice, we matter, and we can trust each other. The other important thing to remember is that to have a resilient organization with a high functioning level of well-being requires that each member in that organization feels connected to that intrinsic motivation that brought them into this vocation to start with. So when we feel that we belong and we can connect our passion to our purpose, we are engaged, we work at our best, we find meaning and joy, and we have the ability to regroup, recover, and redirect in faces of challenges, either personally or professionally as a community. The other thing to remember is that as we are journeying through our work life and our personal life, we are faced with stressors, external stressors personally and professionally. And oftentimes the common human reaction is a survival instinct where we either run away. So if we are challenged with a particular task or project, we stop doing that, or we just give up. And that stifles creativity, that stifles engagement. Or we just get disengaged, we withdraw, become even more lonely and suffer in silence. Or we get defensive and we retaliate, and oftentimes we get labeled as being argumentative or a disruptive physician. So it's important to realize that these emotions are the result of a reaction to a challenge or a stressor that is taken care of, not in a way that leads back to meaning and recovery, but is really even harmful to the self. So it's important to have a pulse on these feelings. This is a word cloud that we got from our members in July when we were in the height of the multiple pandemics here in the US. I'm sure some of these words resonate with you personally or with things that you've heard from your membership, things like being alone, deserted, distressed, or unimportant, and even hopeless. The other thing that happens when we feel like we are not connected or we don't have belonging is we feel sad. We go through this grief cycle in different stages. So it's so important to understand where we are and where our members are on this grief cycle. But most importantly, that to recover and redirect and recoup from this, we need to keep coming back to that meaning. What is it that gives us meaning to reframe our mindset? So with these sort of foundational principles in mind, the way we have approached this at this university is really giving those relationships an intentional value. How can we value and make sure that these are invited and then affirmed? And we do that through regular reflections and rituals. Taking the Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a model, we know that we want to function and we are expected to function at these top two tier, where we appear confident, we have the respect of others, we feel like our voice matters, we are creative. But to be able to do that, we need to make sure that our physiologic needs, our needs for stability and safety and community and belonging are also met, and that we are doing that for our community at work. And as you can see, this fits in very well with the domains of well-being. So how do we do that? I think first there needs to be a very authentic and explicit invitation that self-care is not selfish, it's important, and it is just as much needed as when we take care of others and to take care of others. Then the other important thing is that there needs to be an intentional direction to create safety at work, not just physical safety, but psychological safety. When we feel psychologically safe at work, we can be authentic with all our strengths, but also with our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities. We are not afraid to ask questions for the fear of being appearing ignorant or retribution. We can question the status quo, and then that's when progress and creativity happens. And then we learn to have a dialogue where we can disagree in an agreeable fashion. To be able to achieve that, it's important that the leadership and their perspective are also aligned with the same ideas and mission. And intentional time and resources need to be spent in building this relational trust, because a culture of resilience can only happen when there is trust. Culture change only happens at the speed of trust. And this requires us to then reflect periodically and step back and take a pulse of where we are and what needs to be changed. So this is how we build relational safety and trust. Each community or each team sort of develops these rules of engagement, the touchstones that keep bringing them back to their moral compass of how they want to operate together. As you can see, they're very simple. Things like making sure everybody is respected, invited, and their voices heard. That we learn from each other and encourage each other. That at times it's not right or wrong, it's not black or white, it's just different. We are in a vocation where we have to feel like we have to fix and advise. But to build connection, we need to listen to understand. We need to listen with empathy, not to be right, but to build a relationship. And then most importantly, how can we, when faced with a challenge, instead of withdrawing or getting defensive, turn to wonder and curiosity and reframe and reset our mind to look at the silver lining and reconnect to that meaning. This is an example of the pediatric interns, which they came up with their touchstones and recommendations of how they want to operate as a team with connection and community. And then we laminate it and give it to them as a badge buddy, so then it becomes a constant reminder that keeps sort of helping them reframe and reintegrate. Being present and providing multiple check-ins is really crucial, especially in this virtual world. How can we build that connection maybe in the first few minutes or the end of a Zoom meeting? We have the regular buddy checks, like I have a group of buddies that I check in with every Friday, just send them a positive message, but making sure they know that I'm there for them, and then they check in with me, and then sort of they pay it forward. So that way we don't feel alone. This is something that we sort of remind everybody, and to remind ourselves and others, if we have everything, but also giving an invitation to be open about what are the concerns or what are the difficulties we are facing at this time, and that we are all in this together. Providing opportunities to build skills to cope is very important, but with the realization that it's not a one-size-fits-all. To be able to provide the skills needed for the members, we need to be able to ask and then understand what is needed, not just from the leadership, but also from the people with boots on the ground and in the trenches. And then making sure that we are role modeling the same, and then augmenting and affirming it, whether that's through conversations or our modes of communication like newsletters. It's important to make time for rest and pause. It is said when machines pause, they stop. But when the human mind pauses, it grows, it recovers, it regenerates its creativity and its meaning. So how can we make this an inflexible part of the day? Maybe creating 1 hour once a week as a wellness time, as we do in the Department of Medicine here. And then the other thing to remember is that as healthcare professionals, we feel guilty. We feel like we are not carrying our weight, or we are weak and we have to plow through even when we can't do it. So if we have backup plans built in, then we don't feel that guilt. And then we sort of pay it forward to our colleagues when their time comes. This is one way that we were reframing and redirecting and finding ways to pause, taking advantage of nature and doing it in a physically distanced way. And then making time for really scheduling, like our Zoom lectures and Zoom meetings, a Zoom social time. Really important to continue to find that meaning and purpose. But to be able to do that, we have to promote calmness, a space that allows this to happen. Many places have developed respite rooms, which are a little away from the busyness of the workplace. And then remembering that stories and narratives are powerful. That's what we do in our everyday life anyway. We say, take a history, which is nothing but his story or her story. So how can we listen to that common thread of our stories, which may be unique to us, but they have universal resonance, and then find an opportunity for meaningful reflection? Gratitude is a powerful way to find that silver lining and return to that meaning. We've really lost a lot of rituals where these connections happened automatically, like around a water cooler or the physician's lounge. In our department, it used to be morning report. So how can we take time in our virtual morning report checkouts to really check in with each other? Maybe a few minutes to think in the chat box asking, what kept you up at night? Or what was one good thing that happened yesterday? Or finding a moment to sort of have somebody share something positive or that they may be concerned about. And at the end, maybe offering gratitude to each other privately. That's a really powerful tool we found. Then remembering to appreciate and affirm even small wins. And then making sure we honor our losses so that we just don't tuck them away where they sort of come back in a more powerful emotional way later on because we've not unpacked those feelings. But how can we find meaning in those losses? This is an example of the gratitude ways that, we've had cards around where people can just write and leave them for their buddies. Text messages. This is a gratitude tree in the ICU. And then one of the florists locally delivered some flowers to be distributed to the healthcare professionals as a way of saying thank you. Making time to play at work. How do we create those small moments of joy? One floor had what they have a regular, it's called Happy Hat Day. So they all come in wearing different hats. Something that we do on our team is once a week, we take an intentional time to pause and unpack what gave us hope, what gave us meaning, what inspired us or surprised us, remembering that these narratives are very powerful and build community. We cannot emphasize self-care enough. And the one template that we've used is to make sure that we make it a ritual, to take time during our busy day, maybe even every hour or hour and a half to get up and walk around or take 3 big breaths and stretch, to redirect our focus and attention, to not be feeling that we have to continue to plow through. The professional and personal life seem to be really a little continuous and seamless today in the virtual world. Somebody said that oftentimes it feels like we are sleeping at work. Making sure that we learn to halt, and that stands for avoid getting too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, because when we are in that frame of mind, we are not at our best. Making sure that we cannot be perfect all the time. We cannot be at A-level performance. We need to regulate our expectations and those of others. Again, we've talked about reflection and gratitude, and then making sure that we understand we are human and we have to be kind to ourselves just as we are kind to others. The Oath to Self-Care and Wellbeing was a paper that was published with a couple of members from CHARM. It is a complement to the Hippocratic Oath, which is timeless. However, our healthcare profession today calls for a partnership with the organization and the self, where the self is also important. And how can we remember to take care of ourselves while we are performing with our altruistic motives? So we actually unpack that with our learners, and then they sort of lift up what they are going to be doing to make sure that they are keeping self-care in mind also as they journey along. So as we talk about these ways of building connection and building community, we hope that instead of the normal flight, freeze, and fight reaction, we can come together because of these connections and flock and fortify ourselves to face these challenges, and also come with it with compassion and empathy and learn to forgive ourselves and others and move on and redirect. So the real foundation of building communities of connection is to care. That requires courage, and it requires an intentional attempt to build and give and receive community, to celebrate and appreciate, to be adaptable and allow that adaptability for others also. Remember to practice rituals and affirm relationships, and always come to with an empathetic ear, with encouragement and empowerment of ourselves and others. So I'd like to end with what we call, this is my relationship board, where we sort of celebrate our community and our community beyond the workplace. So here we have some families, and we also have patients that we have lost, as a way of honoring them. So thank you very much.